Dinsdag 28 November 2023. Nou ja, jy het seker nou jou beskuit en jou koffie gehad. Kyk die wêreld om jou en hy lyk maar die mekaar hoor. Dinge is nie lekker nie en ek sit met 'n helse probleem. Ek kry gister 'n boodskap waarin dit koerant uitknipsel is waarin Julius reken die white economy must be destroyed. The white economy must be destroyed. What a fucking genius idea is that? We're sitting with a situation that the civil service, you know, that thing that's supposed to make sure the country is operating optimally, to make it possible for citizens to actually live in the country. That system has collapsed totally. They blacked it. They took that working civil service system, then they blacked it. They unwhited it. And they blacked it, and now it's fucked. Now he wants to take the economy and unwhite it and black it, and obviously fuck it too. What I cannot understand is that in all these destruction actions of these superior logic, natural intelligence, main peanuts, they destroy thousands upon thousands upon thousands of jobs, forcing people from a salary onto a salsa. How can that be seen as a good plan? But I shared that newspaper clip with one of my guys that we talk a lot about these things, and lo and behold, he replies to me, obviously you do not understand what is being said here, because the guy that posted the news clipping said, things must never be sane again. What the hell is that? But then he suggested I enroll in the adult training program, seeing that my primary school education is obviously fucked. Okay, I'll investigate that. But let's look at what's going on in the world. NATO's primary task remains to prevent a military escalation with Russia, the alliance head Stoltenberg said. Now, I can have a whole skidmark on that, but all I can tell you now, NATO was originally set up to be a defense alliance. Now, defense alliance means it must protect the members of the alliance against an attack. But what happened in reality? NATO defended Yugoslavia and bombed the place to fucking pieces. They defended Bosnia, bombed the people into smithereens. They defended Libya, and they fucked the whole country up. They defended Afghanistan, and they fucked the whole country up. So I'm just trying to think, how is it possible that a defensive organization is involved in so many attacks? If you know the reason for it, or the explanation, please put it in the comments. And then there's this little article about a doctor, a surgeon, that returned from Gaza to the UK. And in the UK he gives a news conference and he makes statements that many of the injuries that he saw in Gaza didn't look like amputations by explosions, it looked more like amputations by sword. Well, I don't know what to say about that. Maybe it is the same thing about like that guy that came from Auschwitz and made that press statement after World War II in London in which he claimed 6 million Jews were killed. And that whole thing fell apart when they started cross-examining him. But the world today is still promoting that idea. 6 million were killed. There wasn't even 6 million Jews in Europe. And then there is a report about an oil tanker that ran aground in the Black Sea after those storms. Apparently no damage to it, it's just sitting there. And they say they'll float it again after the storm subsides. And then I see this. Lula impeachment demonstrations sweep Brazil. Mass demonstrations took place in Brazil on Sunday, calling for the impeachment of President Lula da Silva and Supreme Federal Court Judge Alexander de Moraes. The protest, organized by Congressman Nicolas Ferreira, received the support of various politicians calling for nationalist political factions to join forces. It's just weird for me. The election of Lula was clouded and shrouded with lots of controversy, and that previous president fled to America for a while, but he came back to Brazil again, Bolsonaro, and now we see there's demonstrations, and I mean those streets are absolutely packed. People that want Lula out. I wonder where that's going to go. And then from Viktor Orban, Russia will not lose. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said that the US and the EU strategy of funding Ukraine's battle with Russia in the hope that an unlikely battlefield loss will bring about a regime change in Moscow is futile. That was the strategy we finance. The Ukrainians fight and die, he added. However, he said, where we are now, it is obvious that the Ukrainians will not win on the front line. Yeah, they started that, and then they realized this was not a good plan. But instead of stopping it, they doubled down like an addicted gambler. And this is where we are now. About 10,000 people living in the United States have arrived in Israel since the beginning of the war and have been enrolled as reservists, according to the Washington Post. Why is it that these Americans are always so absolutely frantic to get involved in wars? New swine flu strain hits the UK. The first case of a new strain of swine flu has been detected in the UK after a patient experiencing respiratory symptoms was tested, according to the UK Health Security Agency. The H1N2 strain can be passed from pigs to humans and only in rare cases between humans. Well, we've been living, I'm 72 years old. I know flu since I was a kid. But after this pestilence, you have to look at all these things very skeptical. I look here and the moment I read test, I just shake my head and I scroll on. And then this little one. Ukraine won't sign a settlement agreement without Russia paying reparations, insists Deputy Justice Minister Irina Mudra. Well, I've got news for her. They must carry on with the shit that they're doing. Pretty soon there will be no Ukraine left. And then I see this article, and it's a photograph of a lot of kids standing around a plastic drum on a donkey cart from which they're getting water in Gaza. Over 700,000 people in Gaza City and the north of the Strip are in dire need of water, food and fuel. But what do the people care? What do the people of the West care? NATO planned Ukraine membership agreement. Stoltenberg. NATO foreign ministers intend to agree on recommendations for Ukraine path to joining the military alliance by Thursday, said the organization Secretary Jens Stoltenberg. All allies agree that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance after the meeting in Brussels. We will agree on recommendations for reform in Ukraine that will bring it closer to membership. Stoltenberg refused to predict the outcome of the future NATO summit in Washington on Ukraine's membership, but Kiev's full status is impossible during the armed conflict. So they keep on with this NATO membership for Ukraine. That was the main reason why the war is currently there. But they don't learn. But the problem is the EU leadership is a bundle of stupid people, and they're under full control of the warmongers in the shithouse in Washington. This war has basically bankrupted Europe, and it has disarmed NATO. But yet they keep on with this shit of getting Ukraine into NATO. Now, from what I see, what's happening there, the Russians are going to wipe Ukraine off the map. That's what they're going to do. And these people are cheering it on. And then we've got that policeman, Derek Chauvin, that is now in prison for killing George Floyd, which triggered off that whole fucking BLM movement and so forth. The oak is in jail. And now he's been stabbed by an inmate, and the prison officials are keeping his family in the dark. I cannot understand this. That guy was actually in prison. He's actually in prison. Not for a real reason, but for a political reason. North Korea boosts border security. North Korea has sent troops to restore the military border post abandoned as part of the 2018 agreement with South Korea. South Korea had deployed its own surveillance and reconnaissance assets to the border. North Korean forces are now expected to restore all 11 posts that were withdrawn under the 5-year-old accord. And again, the Americans, they are stirring the shit between North and South Korea. And in the end, who will pay? The South Koreans will pay. Biden invokes Cold War medical supply measure. President Joe Biden will invoke a Cold War era measure to allow boosted investment in the production of medicines and supplies as part of an attempt to curb historically high inflation. The Defense Production Act allows boosted investment in medical countermeasures, such as diseases related to chemical and biological and radiological or nuclear attacks. The extra spending reportedly alleviates the supply chain stress. They do all stupid things like this instead of just stop spending so much on wars. But what can you say? And then you get this interesting one. Crimean gold treasures arrive in Ukraine after Western court ruling. A collection of Scythian gold artifacts borrowed from Crimea in 2014 by the Allard Pearson Museum in Amsterdam has arrived in Ukraine. Earlier this year, the Netherlands Supreme Court ruled that the collection should not be returned to Crimea as it is now part of Russia. So let me get this clear. They take these historical artifacts from Crimea to that museum in Amsterdam. And then, now they give it back to Zelensky. Now, Zelensky and his gang has stripped artifacts from the Russian Orthodox Church. And those things were sold apparently on the black market. Now they give that Crimean stuff also to Zelensky. Well, payback is a bitch. EU debates making other countries pay for Russia sanctions violations. A group of member states is pushing to dilute proposals by the EU aimed at cracking down on the circumvention sanctions on Russia through third countries, Bloomberg reported. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Fact of the matter is, as if their economy is not fucked enough, they're now trying this stunt. But the EU is run by idiots. With such soldiers and volunteers, Russia will never lose, former US Army officer. Scott Bennett, a former US Army officer who has visited the Donetsk People's Republic, he says that what he saw did not align at all with what the Western media has been reporting. Now, we know that. I know that. And I've been trying to tell you guys about that. We're being fed lies everywhere about what happened in the Donbass. But the facts on the ground, they talk. Russia blasts American falsehoods on Soviet-era famine. Russia's ambassador to the US, Anatoly Antonov, criticized false claims by the administration of US President Joe Biden that the Soviet leadership used famine as a weapon against Ukrainians in the 1930s, and Russia has adopted a similar policy. Antonov instead insisted that the Soviet-era famine was a common tragedy for Russians, Ukrainians, Kazakhs, and many other ethnic groups. But we know how the Western media can take a narrative, and it might be the biggest lie on earth, but they will run with it, and they will push it and push it and push it. And the useful idiots, they believe that. Russia's Belgorod region shelled 6 times in 24 hours. The Ukrainian armed forces shelled Belgorod region more than 6 times in one day and launched one kamikaze drone attack, Regional Governor Gladkov said in his Telegram channel. Air defense systems also shot down one Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicle. Now, what I can't understand is the Russians, they are fighting the Ukrainian army, and they focused on that, and that is what they do. But the Ukrainians, they attack civilians in Belgorod, in Donetsk, everywhere. And the West doesn't say a word about that. And now I wonder how long will the Western people take to understand that their tax money is used to kill civilians. But no, that will never be published. And then this, Israel to intensify Gaza operations after humanitarian pause. The Israel Defense Forces will resume its military operation throughout the entire Gaza Strip with greater strength, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said. You now have a few days, we will return to fighting. We will use the same amount of power and more. And you see, killing civilians, and the West approves of that. US, UK blocking Gaza ceasefire has cost lives. Maria Zakharova said that. We need to emphasize Russia's principled position of ceasefire has been joined by a majority of countries. This position has been blocked by the US and the UK. The truce is a huge step forward. We have seen appalling statistics. The fact of these numbers demand urgent measures. Because of this block, we have lost a lot of time. Time is human lives. But this is exactly what happened in Turkey. Russia and Ukraine came to an agreement to stop that war. And the UK and the US blocked it. And here we are, 18 months down the track. How many people dead? En dan kom ons 'n bietjie in Suid-Afrika en ons haar 'n boodskap wat daardie ou Letuli van die EFSA organisasie wat sê die verskoning dat die heatwave ons na stadium 6 toe gepush het is nonsens. Ons almal weet dit, maar dis die storie wat vertel word en dis die storie wat ons moet eet. En dan daai stronk wat ek gister gepubliseer het oor ouers en kinders, kry nogal interessante kommentare. As jy dit nog nie gesien het, gaan kyk dit gerus. Ramaphosa, decolonization of education faster. Nou vra ek weer, decolonize education. Ek het 'n Skidmark oor dit gemaak, maar dit wys jou waarmee deel ons. Top Petro SA CEO candidate lied, spied and bullied his way to the top. Nkululeko Poya, who has a string of misconduct findings against him, has found his way to the top of the list for the Petro SA CEO. Why are we not surprised? Dis is dit in Suid-Afrika werk. Hoe langer jou kriminele rekord is, hoe hoër posisie kry jy in die ANC. Petro SA Organized Crime Syndication has implicated the Central Energy Fund flowing to the implication of the Republic of South Africa as a sovereign organized crime state. This has directly implicated in person Ramaphosa, Jeff Radebe, Tito Mboweni and Pravin Gordhan, who were informed timeously by my attorney in writing with letters that I personally drafted. But that is the Hornets. They are fighting like hell to get the corruption thing under control. And then there's that video that is running around on social media of how Durban has deteriorated and is now basically a slum city. And then there's a guy that reckons that Cyril is an AI bot. Could really be. En dan is daar hierdie artikel van bejaarde vroue helder oordag beroof. 2 bejaarde vroue is Vrydagmiddag deur 4 gewapende rowers beroof. Dit was in KwaZulu. En Telkom se skuld balloon met meer as 3200%. Lekker. En dan hierdie is nou net 'n post wat jy miskien kan van kennis neem. Nadat die gelofte deur Andries Pretorius voorgestel is, wou Karel Landman weet, wat sal dan nou met ons nageslag gebeur as hulle nie die gelofte nakom soos beloof is nie? Toe het Sarel Silje geantwoord, dan sal God hulle aan dieselfde vyand oorgee waarteen hy ons nou sal beskerm. Ietsie om oor te dink. And then we've got a double murder in Alberton. They broke into a house at Reinhardt Primary School about half an hour ago. The woman and boy were hacked to death with an axe. The man was able to get away. Ons leef in 'n violent land, hoor. En dan is hier nou weer die ou storie, daar was al in die verlede sulke stories, soos 'n foto van 'n klomp splinternuwe Nissan double cab bakkies, en Outa SA tweeted, "Nothing to see here, folks. Just 57 new double cab bakkies at a cost of 55 million to Limpopo's traditional leaders. An early Christmas present from South African taxpayers, funded by Limpopo's provincial government, Gokta. Luckily, we can relax. It's apparently not bribes for support in the election." If you believe that. In any case, this is where we are. South Africa is a mess. And it is damn hot, and I'm worried. The rain is not coming to the Lowveld. It's dry here. We should have had a lot more rain than we've already had. So I'm a bit concerned. But the reality is, time does not stop. The seconds keep on ticking. Have a great day, and please share my stuff, because I'm not very popular with the social media algorithms. The only way the stuff gets out is if you share it. And I do my shares on Twitter, but it gets almost 0 views. So they're not showing my stuff. And I need the support. Have a great day.